Hi there. Thanks for joining me again on Gaps and Gains. I'm Peter K. de Villiers, and in each episode I like to try and answer some questions that I've been asked and that I've come across, be that at networking events, prospects, customers, and share the answers with you, and then that way you can learn from that, and we can learn together. So getting to question number 1 for this week, why does growth feel threatening instead of exciting? I think the short answer for it is because you haven't done the preparation, you haven't done the work. So if you simply expect whatever you're doing at the moment to work when you grow bigger, you'll fall flat on your face. And in business, that can be very painful and expensive. And I think if you fear the business growing, in some respects it's probably a good sign, because it means you actually know that things aren't the way it should be. Whereas if you've built the business and you've started building, you don't have to have it finished, but if you've started building the business and pushing it in the right direction to actually be a business that can grow, then that growth will become exciting, because you know that the business can cope with it, rather than the wheels coming off. And you can think of it like that. If you've built a kit car, or you've built yourself as a kid, you've built a box car, and you're pushing it around the back garden, that's all fine and that's all good. But when you start going down a steep hill and you go faster, or whatever that might be, and the wheels are wobbling, you might slam on the brakes a bit, because it just doesn't feel secure, it doesn't feel safe. Whereas actually the idea is that you go down the hill, you go really fast, you're in control, and it's all really exciting. So if the wheels aren't on properly, they will wobble and they're at risk of coming off, and you will feel fear instead of excitement in that moment. And it's the same in the business. If you find a good source of business coming in, but you haven't actually worked on the business in order to help it maintain that, and service that, then you will fear it, because you actually know that you're not ready. In some respects you won't ever be ready, but you have to keep doing the work to push in the right direction. And then that actually relates quite a bit to the second question: at what point does growing bigger make the business harder rather than easier? And it's at the point where you know, and that you are very much out over your skis on this. So I'll give you an example. If from way back when I was running an electrical contracting business, so I'll use that context to give you an example. And most trades businesses, the majority of them start as a one-man band, someone with a skill set doing the work. Okay, so that works fine. You're doing small jobs, medium-sized jobs. It's fine if you have to pop out to the electrical contractors, the shop in the morning to pick up materials, and then you go and do the work. And then later in the afternoon, you're on a job, you can pop out and get something you don't have because you didn't know you were going to need it on this repair job, and you go back. So that's okay. But if you imagine that scenario still being in place when you've got 3 other people, 3 vans on the road, doing that, if they all have to rely on you to go and pick up materials, and they're on jobs, repair jobs, and they have to ring you to bring them some materials, and you go and pick it up, you're going to be run ragged. You're going to be unable to actually manage the business because you're going to be all over the place. You'll also be very inefficient because you guys will be sitting around waiting for you to bring materials. Now, if you then make the change that there's one place where they come and pick up materials in the morning for the work that's scheduled for that day, and that could be just meeting outside the same electrical supply store, and everyone picks up what they need for the day. Or it could be that you now have a small warehouse where you have stock delivered and farm it out that way. but then you also know that on their van they've got some miscellaneous stuff on the van that every van has, and it's well stocked, so that when they go to smaller repair jobs, it's very likely they'll have what they need for those things. And then obviously you go to the next step where it's also, well, fine, they've picked stuff up in the morning, but they have permission and you have an arrangement with the supply store that they can come and pick things up. Now, first you might use your favorite supply store that's not always close to the job, and then you can alleviate some of the stress of that by using a chain of stores so that your guys can go and pick up at any of their stores and can just always go to the nearest one to the job. So you can see how you can actually grow the business, and there are almost like a gear change where you can make things easier again. It gets harder, and then there's a change you can make to make it easier again. And that's really what the business will go through time and again. It's not going to be a straight line, because some of the changes require a certain scale, or that the business has reached a certain point before you do that. And you'll just change the gears of the business as you go. And if you think about that, if you're finding that the business has become much harder to run than it used to be, look at what gear change you can make to alleviate that tension, and then you can start accelerating again. And the same as a car, when you get to the top of the gears range, you have to change gear in order to go faster. Otherwise, all you'll do is stick to that speed and blow the engine up. So think of those gear changes that you can make when things get hard, because it will happen at different stages depending on what your business is. Moving on to question 3, how do I train a new team member to deliver to the same standard I would? Now, there's 2 types of training. The one is training them to do the job, training them to have the knowledge to do the job. So you could train someone as an apprentice to be a plumber or to be a bricklayer. So that's the one element that you can train. And the other element of training is actually the harder part, and that is training expectation. And like you say, getting them to deliver at the standard that you would. Now, you would do that by making sure they have many examples of what standard is expected. They know exactly what standard is expected and why it's important. And there's an element of that can be frustrating at times, and it's a bit like raising kids. It's quite an incessant process. Saying something once and saying that's the expectation is not enough. You have to, for most people, there's got to be some repetition, and you need to make sure that you're consistent. If you sometimes expect them to deliver to the standard you would, but other times you let things slide, then they're not entirely sure what you're expecting. Or if I can do it this way 3 times, well, why can't I do it on the next job? So you want to be able to separate those 2 things. It's again, if you think, let's say, an accounting firm, the actual doing of the accounts is one piece of training, but then the client communication is a completely different thing, and how you want people to communicate over the phone or via email or face-to-face is an ongoing training process that's harder than the initial skill to do the job. So I think it's important to make sure you understand what those 2 separate things are, because it's not just one piece of training. And then, like I said, make sure you're consistent and make sure that your team members actually know what's expected of them and what that standard is. And hold each other accountable, and I think you'll be well on your way. So question 4, how do I use automation to generate more Google reviews without it feeling fake? Now, I think the biggest lever you can pull with automation to get more Google reviews is the asking for a review. Because lots of businesses aren't very good at asking, and that's the first hurdle. If you never ask, the majority of people don't tend to leave reviews for anything, whether they're happy or not. So automate the asking can immediately get you better results. But then also, because most people don't leave reviews for things, a lot of people don't know how to leave a review. And I don't mean where to click and where to go to do it, but the wording and the phrasing, because you want the reviews to be helpful to your business and helpful to other prospects who see the reviews. The review is not really for your benefit. It's nice when you get a 5-star review, but the real value in that review is the other people who see it. So what we tend to do in our foundation systems, what we build in, is at the point where it's determined the job has been delivered, the service has been delivered, and it's now the right point to ask for a review and for feedback. We don't phrase it as, can you leave a Google review? That's not step one. So the first thing we do is that we send an email out just saying, hey, we'd love your feedback on how we did in delivering this service or product or job. And can you just answer 5 questions? So they click the link, it goes to a form where they answer 5 questions. The majority of those are open-ended, but the first question is, what star rating would you give us? 1 to 5. So then it splits off in 2 things. If it's a rating of 1 to 3, which is essentially an indication that they weren't happy, their answers subsequently goes to you, and you then can deal with that, and it gets a notification, so you can jump on that, because a 3-star review means something went wrong and you need to sort that out. So that's where that ends. They've filled in the survey and indicated that if they were to leave a review, it would be a 3-star. So 3, 2 and 1 gets filtered one way, and you deal with those personally, and you don't actually ask them for a review at that stage. If someone says a 4 and a 5, then what happens is their answers to the 5 questions, we send those to AI, and with an appropriate prompt to turn the answers to those questions into a 2-paragraph review, just a short review. And then we email the person who completed the survey and say, hey, thank you so much for the feedback, really helpful. I've taken the liberty of drafting a review based on your feedback. Change whatever you need to, but it would really help us if you could post this as a review on our Google My Business page. You can click here to do that. Just copy and paste and do this. More often than not, people will just copy and paste because you've done the hard work for them. They can read it. It's referencing the feedback they've just given you. So it's very unlikely that they won't agree with what the review says. They might change some of the wording, but for the most part, they're happy to do it, because the hard work is thinking how to phrase the review and what to say beyond great service. And a 5-star review that says great service isn't particularly informative to your prospects. So that's how you would run that, and how we would use automation. And you can see how none of that comes across as fake to either the person who's been asked to complete the survey and then to post a review. It doesn't come across as fake on the the review site, because they're all fully fledged reviews, full body reviews that will go out. So that's how we would set it up. That's how we would run that kind of system. And then the last one is question 5. What type of business owner are you not a right fit for? I'm certainly not, and the work that we do doesn't really fit with business owners who want everything sorted tomorrow, and or wants a massive piece of work and it takes 6 months to deliver and we only test it 6 months down the line. So we don't work with many people at a time, small number of clients at a time, and we definitely work side by side with them, and it's iterative and it's a partnership. It's not a case of simply you telling us, oh, build this automation for me, and then we build it and we don't ask any questions around it. We just follow instructions like a monkey, because we've got lots of experience, but we also don't have experience of your business, so we can mix those things together. But if it's a case of wanting to abdicate responsibility and just, hey, if I send you an email to build an automation, just build that automation and don't ask any questions, that's not really the work we do. It's not the relationship we enjoy working in. And for my money, it doesn't get a good result for us or for the client. So I'd say if someone's not willing to work side by side, iterate over a period of time and make improvements and really work together, those are not the kind of people we work with. So I hope that's been helpful, and I'll see you again next week. So this has been another episode of Gaps and Gains. I'm Pieter K. de Villiers. Blind Spot works. Find the gaps, fix the business.